To be honest, I never was really needing a change per se, or like actively looking for to disrupt my career. But I think for me, it was more that I kind of came across a huge problem that I felt very strongly needed to be solved and was really passionate about solving. And that's why I was motivated to quit my career and start the company. And I think there's kind of an opportunity.
You're listening to the Quit Your Job and Get Creative podcast, where we talk about quitting your unfulfilling job and pursuing your creative entrepreneurial dreams. My goal is to help you realize earning a living doing what you love is possible for you. You'll hear stories of women who have quit their 9-to-5 jobs and started their creative businesses. You'll learn how they did it, the ups and downs, and secrets to success. I believe that you are good enough and capable to live out your dreams. I'm your host, Jocelyn Clarkson. Now, let's get started. Welcome to another episode. Rachel is the CEO and founder of Rivia Health, a platform that helps patients understand, manage, and pay all of their medical bills in one place. Rachel has over a decade of product development and management experience in Fortune 100 companies. After experiencing medical bill mayhem personally in 2016, Rachel decided to apply her consumer product development background to create a better medical payment solution for patients. In February of 2018, Rachel founded RexPay and now Rivia Health. And today, Rachel will be sharing her journey starting Rivia Health. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the way I like to start this podcast is with this question. What did you want to be when you were young?
I wanted to be an author when I was very young, but when I was in high school, I wanted to do international business.
Did you ever think growing up, did you ever think that you would become an entrepreneur? Was that something that you ever dreamed about?
I think it was in the realm of possibility for me, as I thought about my life in the future, because both of my parents are entrepreneurs. So I really grew up watching both of them run their own businesses. So I knew that it was possible to do that. But I also knew how hard it was to do that. And so I didn't take that lightly. And it's not necessarily something I was pursuing. So initially I was pursuing more of a corporate career.
Got it. So it's almost like entrepreneurship found you.
Yeah.
So you said you wanted to study, you were interested in international business, and you ended up studying communications in college, correct?
Yes, communication studies. Yeah.
So what made you want to study communications? Were you trying to apply that with business, or did you end up kind of changing career paths at that point when it came time to choosing your study topic or major?
Yeah, well, I really liked communication theory as a major because it opens up a lot of different avenues for career choices in the future. So it doesn't really lock you in. So you can be an attorney later with a communication theory degree. You can be in the foreign service. You can go into journalism. Obviously, that's what most people think of. Or you can go into business as well. And so I liked the flexibility of those different options. And then with my interest in international business, I ended up starting the Asian Studies program at Westmont and kind of integrating that interest together with communication. But I was always really, interested in business along the way. But I figured, with business, everything's changing so quickly with technology and globalization. And so I think for me, I just figured if I took a business class by the time I graduated, everything would be different. So I just wanted to get skills that could really apply to anything in life. And I also took some good advice from one of my mentors who said, actually follow the professors, not the classes or the topics. So I did a little bit of research when I first got to my college and tried to understand where the strongest professors were and the professors who I resonated with. And that was primarily in the communication studies department. So those were the factors in that choice.
I love, Rachel, that you came in ready with the game plan. You were like, okay, what major is going to help me propel forward in the future? Where is it going to serve me? How is technology changing? I think that you just having that kind of mindset where a lot of college students and probably even myself we're like, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to make friends and party and whatever it is. So I think it's really interesting that you came in with that mentality. And I think that I'm sure in many ways, this mentality is what makes you an awesome entrepreneur. So it's really awesome to hear. So while you were in college or after you graduated, what was that first job out of college and in what industry was that in?
So my first job out of college was actually in the wine industry. So I was in charge of import and distribution into East Asia for 6 wineries on the right bank of Bordeaux, France, and then 3 wineries in California, all owned by one company. But that was my first job. So I was living in Shanghai, China. Again, I had kind of already had that bent on interest on international business in China. So that was a really good fit and opportunity for me. And I did that for 2 years, ended up selling one of the wineries to one of my customers in Hong Kong. And I sold several millions of dollars worth of luxury wine during that time, which was awesome. They actually wanted me to move back to the States to continue working for them, but I wanted to stay in China and keep working on my Mandarin. So I decided to join more of the corporate world and joined BBDO in their luxury goods consulting business for China at that time. And so that's how I got into corporate and initially the advertising industry.
So, I mean, that's really interesting, Rachel, that you were living in China right after college. And I think that kind of also is in alignment with starting a business, because when you think about, I mean, even moving out of state, right, from where you grew up can be such a nerve-wracking experience. And the fact that you moved across the globe in a country that probably, speaks a different language, a different culture, I think that kind of also speaks to your risk-taking abilities and you're seeking those new experiences. What about Asia or China really attracted you to it?
So I played the violin in high school and college, and the Phoenix Symphony Guild Orchestra that I was part of traveled to China when I was 15. So that was actually the first time I left the country, was going to China. And I just immediately fell in love with the culture there and the depth of the history and the richness of the culture and the connection to food and language and how it's all tied together so beautifully, and became fascinated with that. And then I started reading more and more about Chinese history, and then that led to me learning about Chinese business and the role that China was playing in globalization. And I just figured, not only do I love this culture and love the people and the food and the language, but China's going to play a huge role, in the world in the future. And obviously back then it was already pretty obvious, but now it's, of course, almost 20 years later, like super obvious to everybody. But it wasn't so much at that time. It was still a little weird for people, at least from where I was from in Arizona. People were a little confused as to why I loved China so much and was focused on it. But yeah, it's now it's obvious to everybody. Everyone's like, yeah, of course you need to learn Mandarin, right? So,
most of the gadgets and objects that we, use on a daily basis, most of them came from China. So yeah. It makes total sense. So at what point did you move back to the U.S.?
Yeah, so I had been in China for 5 years. And I had a really great mentor who was saying, like, look, you really need to diversify your expertise and your experience, because if you continue down the path and you get close to 10 years of being an expert in Asia, then you'll always be the Asian expert, right? Or like within business, you'll be like the China business expert within the division or whatever. And he said, if you want to have a more diverse breadth of experience and opportunity, then he recommended that I get a global role. So that's what I did. I had a friend that recommended me to Avon, and I ended up moving also to the brand side versus the advertising agency side, which was another career choice that I intentionally made. So kind of wanting to go from being the person who is executing on the campaign for the brand manager to being the brand manager. So I joined Avon as an associate brand manager.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so that was the initial move back to the US where I was in New York City. And then from there, I went to Unilever also via the recommendation of friends and referral of friends. And whenever I tell my story, you know, I think every job that I've gotten in my life has always been through a connection or someone I knew. So I always really want to be transparent about that, but they're not necessarily like my parents' friends, or no, actually none of them, right? Were like my parents' friends or someone that just kind of handed me that intro, but they're relationships that I built and invested in. And I really recommend to anyone early in their career or any time in their career that they really recognize kind of how the world works and how doors open. And it's almost always through a referral, right? So I definitely recommend keeping that in mind if you're looking for a new job and you're unhappy in the job you're in now. Think about who you know, like who's in your network, and then what companies are they in that they could refer you to, or maybe go to more networking events and try to expand your network if you feel like you don't have enough connections in the right industry.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true. I would say 80% of the jobs I landed in corporate America were through referrals as well. I mean, very rarely do you just blindly apply and then get through the system and then go through the whole interview process. Like I will say, I definitely 100% agree with that. So as you were working in corporate as a brand manager, as you were working through that, did you ever feel like there was something else out there for you? Like, did you ever feel that, you know, maybe this isn't it? And if so, what were some of the signs that you had or the thoughts that would come up?
Yeah, I think in some ways I was in a really great position because Unilever is a great company. They were kind of ahead of their time. So they already offered flex working hours, a partly like remote environment. So you could already be in the office as a hybrid model. And they were very supportive of working parents. And so that actually was a company that I did think I could continue to grow in and build a career and be happy there. But I think that, you know, to be honest, I never was really needing a change per se, or like actively looking for, to disrupt my career. But I think for me, it was more that I kind of came across a huge problem that I felt very strongly needed to be solved and was really passionate about solving. And that's why I was motivated to quit my career and start the company. And I think there's kind of an opportunity cost evaluation as well that I was doing, where I thought, you know, I could continue building this career and make X amount every year and then get promoted in 3 years and make X amount, right? And by the time I'm ready to retire, I'll be making this and my retirement will be Y. Like you can really do the math in the corporate world like that for the most part, knock on wood. And I think that I thought to myself, well, however, I could like play a gamble a little bit and like go really hard in this one direction with starting my company for 5 to 10 years and then have a really big payout and a really big windfall if I can successfully exit a company that I built. And then from there, my optionality would open up where I can either start another company and own more of it and sell that, or I can be on boards and advise and be kind of part-time and invest in more time in my family directly, or, you know, just be more creative with how I spent my time. Or I could join a private equity firm from there and like turn around other businesses and get windfalls from that financially and then retire early. I don't know. So I just kind of thought, well, I'm going to take the gamble. Like I can either continue on this very predictable route of how much I'll make in my lifetime, or I can like blow everything up in a way and see what I can do to win a little bit bigger and have a little bit more optionality in my career and options for making money in the future. And at the end of the day, that's what I decided to do. But again, it was really rooted in the passion for the problem. So, because I've seen how hard it is to be an entrepreneur watching my parents, and it's no easy feat. And it really requires a lot from you. You know, it's taken time away from my friendships, from my family, from my partner, you know, and it's taken time away from me investing in myself and my personal growth outside of being an entrepreneur, right? So being an entrepreneur kind of is all consuming, and that defines you for a long time. You can be careful about it, but like more or less, if you're going to build a company, you have to have a period of time where it's just like 100% or 90% about the company. And that's a huge cost, you know? So you really want to be careful and weigh that cost. And you want to make sure that the company that you're starting is something that you can get behind and you have true passion about, and that it's not just about the money opportunity. Because if it's just about making the money, then it's very hard to have the resilience to push through really difficult times.
I love that you brought that up, because I truly believe that you have to be passionate. And, you know, for me, it's like, for me to start this business, it had to be aligned with my life's purpose, which is to empower women to follow their dreams, right? And so, because if you don't have that passion, you're going to come across so many hurdles as an entrepreneur. Like, there are nights where you're crying. There are days where you feel like giving up. And if you don't have that passion, after the first few hurdles, you're going to give up. And so you really, you know, that passion is what gives you that resilience to keep going. So I love that you pointed that out. So how did Rivia Health come about? What medical mayhem did you experience, if you feel comfortable sharing some of that with us?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually had one severe injury that resulted in, and I'm fully recovered now. So I'm very grateful for that. But I had 38 medical bills across 11 different physicians and over $10,000 in debt that I was liable for, like patient out of pocket. And now that was with pretty much the best insurance plan in the country, right? With Unilever, low deductible plan. You know, I think I was with United, you know, so I had really great coverage. But even in that circumstance, what really struck me is that most of the pain points that I was experiencing as a patient, receiving those bills, trying to understand it, trying to pay it and manage it, was that the lack of application of modern technology to that use case is really what was driving most of the challenge for me. And as someone who had been leading digital innovation, you know, within the departments that I was working in, I was aware that there was better technology that could be applied. Like, this isn't rocket science, right? There's existing tech that we just need to apply to this problem. And when I started digging into it a little bit more, that's when I started getting even more passionate about the problem outside of how I experienced it, because medical debt is actually the number one reason why people file bankruptcy in the United States. And it represents 65% of all bankruptcy. And when we talk about the homeless problem in the United States, it's impossible to divorce the homeless challenge that we have with the medical debt challenge that we have, right? They're directly related. And, you know, women are disproportionately affected. Women of color, of course, are disproportionately affected because they tend to have the jobs that either don't provide healthcare because they're working multiple jobs part-time. They also tend to have the jobs that don't provide any maternity leave, right? So if they have a complication with their pregnancy or delivery, not only do they have a $20,000 responsibility for their medical bills from that delivery, but now they have recovery time that causes them to lose their job. So I just started kind of putting some of these macro trends together and realized how impactful this one problem is on patients. And then as I started digging into it more, I uncovered the fact that it's also a huge problem for provider organizations. So because 400 billion needs to be collected from patients every year so that provider organizations can get paid and continue operating, right? Because patient responsibility, unfortunately, now represents 15% of all revenue for your provider's office, right? So they cannot run unless they get paid by patients. And while the government does step in for low income, very low income people who qualify for Medicaid or some Medicare, at the end of the day, that 15% is still coming from out of pocket. So they actually spend $282 billion trying to collect the $400 billion. That's just attempting. Wow. So providers feel the pain as well on their side. And, the more you talk to providers, the more you realize they're not trying to stick it to patients. Like, they're not intentionally overcharging or intentionally sending duplicate bills. These are all tech problems, right?
Right.
And so the truth is 80% of all providers offer payment plans to patients that are credit risk free, zero interest, super safe. So why do 45% of patients use credit cards to pay for their payments, right? So I'll stop with like all the speak about the company, but it's just that that's the problem, right? So when I uncovered, oh my gosh, wow, like this is such a huge problem in the US. And if I can make an impact by applying modern tech to this, like this is going to revolutionize the industry and also patient experience.
Hi, Boss Babe. I want to take a quick second to tell you about how you can get free business advice, coaching, and trainings from me for free. Yes, I said that right. Absolutely free. If you are thinking of starting a business or have already started a business, but you're not getting the sales that you want or are struggling in general, then you need to attend my free weekly live trainings. I cover topics like how to prepare to quit your job or how to get over your fear of showing your face online and so much more. You can register using the link in my show notes or simply go to my Instagram at Quit Your Job and Get Creative and click on the link in bio where it says free training and make sure to register. Can't wait to see you there and help you grow your business. Now let's get back to the show.
So that was something I could get behind and really take a risk for.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lack of education around the whole medical payment system and even the, people paying with their credit cards for a bill that you can pay off with no interest. I think, and the ironic part is the people who probably need the most help are also lacking that education.
Yeah.
So how did this come to, so you realize these are big problems and you're passionate about it and you realize how big the problem is. It's not just an inconvenience. It's more than that. It's affecting women. It's affecting homelessness. It's really widespread. So how did you go about, what was that moment when you were like, okay, I'm going to explore this and I'm going to try to come up with a solution?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine from college, again, friends, connections, his dad is actually an executive in the healthcare space and was on the board of a digital healthcare accelerator in San Francisco. And I had one quick call with him, and his son was encouraging me as well. And he said, look, like if you quit your job and you start this company, which I think you should do, I'll be one of your first investors and I will recommend you to this accelerator. So I quit my job. I probably did it too quickly, but I did. I quit my job shortly after that. I was like, okay, let's do it. I feel like I have enough support now that I can go do this. I didn't, but I just didn't know that. That's okay. But yeah, so I flew to San Francisco, interviewed with the accelerator. They accepted us into the program on the spot. And from there, I actually met my first large check investor on the Southwest flight, leaving that accelerator meeting. Yeah, I was sitting next to him and I didn't know he was an investor. He was the former CFO of Autodesk.
Wow.
And I didn't know he was an investor, but I was just so pumped, right? And then he understood the problem. His niece is a cancer survivor, and he got really excited about what we were doing and said, hey, I'm an investor. Why don't you send me a deck? And actually, at the time, I didn't even know what he meant by a deck. I had to go Google it later. But yeah, so that's how everything kind of started. And so the Launchpad Digital Health Accelerator program is where I started, and I did that full time for 3 months. And then incorporated the company after that because I took that time to really validate the business model and confirm the opportunity and review the competitive landscape and all of that.
I mean, it's, you're validating the business model, but even on your flight to this accelerator program, you're already meeting, people that you didn't even know were investors. And the fact that, your friend's father, thought of this as a big enough problem to say, I'm investing, right? That's a good sign. So you quit your job on almost on a whim. What was the feedback from your family and friends?
So my parents, who are both entrepreneurs, were all for it, right? Because they always have wanted their kids to be entrepreneurs because that's their philosophy in life. So they were very supportive and always have been. And my parents are also investors in my company now and have been very supportive. So I did have some other family members, though, and some friends who seriously had a talk with me where they sat me down and they said, this is a bad decision, right? You have a dream job at a corporate company. You have a great path, a great career. Go get your job back. This was a bad decision. And then I had some friends that, didn't have an opinion one way or the other, and they were just supportive. And they were like, yeah, you also moved to China pretty much on a whim. So, you're Rachel.
Now it's almost like COVID too. A lot of people quit their jobs during COVID, and it's like, what are you doing? Do you want to do this in such an uncertain time? But, I think for you, it was like, you have this passion, right? That was what was leading you to kind of move through these uncertain times. That is so amazing. That's such an amazing story. You should write a book at some point. So what's next for Rivia Health? Where do you see the company going in a few years?
So we are getting ready for our Series A round. So we're super excited. We did kind of go through a lot of hardships, right? We started the company as a direct-to-consumer mobile app, and then we survived COVID, and we had a few near-death experiences during COVID. And then we decided to do a full pivot to B2B SaaS software, right? Different customer, different product stack, different business model, full pivot in the back half of 2021, new team members, almost like a new company to a certain extent. So we went through that evolution in the back half of 2021. And then it really wasn't until later in 2022, starting in May of 2022, where we really started to find our stride with product market fit and a repeatable sales model. And then we really started rocking and rolling. And with just 2 salespeople, we grew our revenue 90% from Q3 to Q4 in 2022. And we're already exceeding the prior month's numbers for January. And usually January is a slower month in healthcare. So we've been growing our sales team. We're focused right now on growing revenue, taking the model that's working really well and amplifying that to just grow faster. And then we're planning on doing a Series A this year. And from there, expanding into different market opportunities, market segments, and continuing to evolve the product.
I think it's important for our listeners to hear stories like this, because I think oftentimes a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs are influenced by this idea of the overnight success. And they think that, oh, if this business doesn't work out, if I don't do well within the next 2 months or 3 months, if I'm not an overnight success, I should just give up. And here you are, right? It took like years, and you even had to pivot your business model to kind of find that rhythm. And so I think it's really important for our listeners to realize that you may be an overnight success, but I wouldn't count on it, right? It takes time. What has been the hardest part about being an entrepreneur?
I would say it can be very lonely being an entrepreneur because there are a lot of things that you can't really fully share with all of your team members, and certain things that, depending on how involved your family is in your business or your partner is in your business, sometimes there are just things that you can't easily share really with anyone close to you. And then you're really carrying that burden alone a lot of the times. And so it's very important to either find the right co-founder, which I now have, but I didn't originally. So it's great to have Elizabeth first as my co-founder now. She started as the VP of products when we pivoted the company. And then I instated her as co-founder and COO about 6 months ago. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. She's awesome. But yeah, having a partner that you can be transparent with and work through hard things is very important. If you don't have a co-founder, having a mentor who's not an investor is important. So having a mentor who doesn't have any like equity stake in the company and you can just kind of brainstorm openly with without worrying about how it's going to be interpreted is really important too. So having a safe space. I would say that's probably one of the hardest aspects. And then related to that is just carrying the burden of like the CEO's job is to not run out of money, right?
Yes.
Do not run out of money is what they say. That's the number one job of the CEO. So that can be a lot of pressure. So, at different stages in the company, I've had anywhere from 3 to 33 employees that their full-time salaries and healthcare for their families were reliant on my ability to execute. And that can be a lot of pressure, especially during a recession or during COVID. And also the mental health and well-being of your team is also very highly dependent on the leader, right? So you have a huge responsibility as a leader in terms of how you communicate with the team, what expectations you set, and what culture you set, because that can really have a trickle-down effect on their families and their whole lives. So that's the latter part is, I would say, something that I enjoy, like a responsibility that I take seriously, but enjoy investing in. And the responsibility to not run out of money is more of like a monkey that's always on my back, but that's okay. That's my job. So
that is a lot of pressure just in all aspects, right? Like carrying that burden and now you have a co-founder, but having someone to talk to. What are some ways that you protect your mental health, that you stay sane?
Sometimes I'm better at it than others. But some things that I've seen have helped me are, one, to really protect weekends. So unless something absolutely has to happen on a weekend, don't work on the weekend, because your work will still be there on Monday. And even if you work on the weekend, work will still be there on Monday. The to-do list never ends. So it's important to carve out time that you can protect and just have downtime and unplug to recover. And then taking care of your health, your physical health and well-being also is important in connection to your mental health. So getting 8 hours of sleep every night is key. Exercising, at least 2 or 3 times a week, or just have a low bar, like go for a walk. I have a dog who's sleeping on the couch behind me. And something that's really helped is that he has to go out At
Mm-hmm.
5 or in the morning, he has to walk every morning. And at 5 p.m., he has to go to the park and run around because we don't have a yard. And that's great because that really forces me to have a moment of, okay, I'm disconnecting. I'm getting into nature. I'm getting sunshine and I'm moving around. And that makes a huge difference. I'd also say as founders, like, try not to rely on, substances and alcohol to unplug. Instead, try to lean into like exercise and laughter and like healthier outlets and opportunities there, because you do have to release that stress somehow. And I think there's a vicious cycle that can be created when you rely on like smoking, drinking, whatever that is for you, that's an unhealthy sub outlet. That can be a vicious cycle that can work against your mental health. And it's hard to break once you start that. And then it can influence your team and your company and everything. So I would just watch out for that because it can be a slippery slope as an entrepreneur as well.
Right. You got to make sure that you know how to say no to the bottles of wine that are sitting on your counter every now and then.
Yeah.
I love that tip. So to wrap this up, Rachel, what is some advice that you would give to women that are listening right now? Maybe they're on the train on the way to their fulfilling jobs. Maybe they're sitting at their desks right now. They want to start a business, but are afraid to get started, and they're battling self-doubt, fear of failure. What would you say to those women?
I would take some time to either journal or draw or whatever type of brainstorm record keeping works for you. But just kind of start to outline for yourself, like, how passionate am I about this problem? And think about your opportunity cost. Maybe create like the 2 columns for pros and cons and really think through, like, is this problem worth working on for 5 years, even if I don't get any monetary value back from it, right? Because that's always the possibility. Only 5% of startups even make it to a Series A stage. So most startups are going to fail, right? And so we want to be honest about that. Also, if you're a woman, which everyone on this listening here is, it's a lot harder to raise funding. So I'm not trying to discourage you. I think every woman should start a company, and I want to see more women as founders, like, not intentionally discouraging you. But I do think that before you quit your corporate job or start something, it's good to see the costs and really evaluate it up front, so that when you're in the midst of a difficult situation, I chose this eyes wide open, and I know what the worst case scenario is, and that's okay with me. Worst case scenario, I'm comfortable with, and that also helps with your mental health. So I would say kind of create that pros and cons and list out your monetary cost, opportunity cost. So think about, how much can I make in the career I'm in now? Also opportunity costs with mental health in the career you're in now. Like, why are you unhappy in that career? Is starting a company the right answer? Because that's going to be really challenging as well. Or if you're looking for more balance, is a different corporate career maybe better, or an alternative career? So anyway, that's kind of what I would recommend, is the opportunity cost evaluation, and then start thinking about, who do you have in your network who's going to support you? Absolutely. If you have a partner, talk to your partner. How does your partner feel about sharing this level of risk, right? Because they're going to be in it with you big time. So you want to make sure that they're bought in and they're like your co-founder in the home and on board. Who are the friends that you can call at any time that are going to back you up? Who are the investors that you know, or people that are willing to introduce you to investors to get a foothold in capital, because you need that to start most businesses as well. So just kind of think about your network, your support group. Is there a startup collective nearby? So like a community of startup founders in your area that you can plug into and start talking to them. And then you'll often find that support there and find some advisors and mentors there. I did. And so those would be the first steps, I would say. Find your network, your support community, look for routes for funding, think about your financial situation. Can you afford to not take a salary or take a significantly lower salary for at least 2 to 3 years? And then kind of go from there, because I was fortunate that I did have some savings when I started, and all of that savings got depleted in the process of starting this business, and then became debt, right? So like, that's a reality that you want to make sure you're going in eyes wide open with as well. So do some financial reconciliation.
Yeah, that savings comment sounds very familiar. So where can people follow you in your journey in Rivia Health if they want to get in touch or just see follow your journey with Rivia?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, sadly. I'm not super active on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Mertensmeyer, or on LinkedIn, if you just search my name, Rachel Mertensmeyer, or CEO of Rivia Health, you'll find me there, and you can follow me or add me as a connection. And yeah, I always am happy to support women founders, and just want to encourage you to, I think if you don't have a network where you have access to capital out of the gate, don't be discouraged, because pitch events are a great way to start getting exposure. And angel groups, even if you're too early to have an angel group invest in you as a group, sometimes they'll let you pitch, and then there's a super angel in the group who's like, hey, I'll write you a $25,000 check. And that's a great way to get started. And then they know an investor, right? And then just keep asking everyone you meet for an introduction, and don't be shy. Like, you are now a salesperson for your business all the time, and keep that in mind. So you got to put yourself out there if you're going to do this, and ask everyone, like, do you know anyone who would be interested in investing in this opportunity? Do you know anywhere I can pitch to get in front of investors? So like, don't be discouraged if you don't have a fraternity to fall back on, or you don't have like a family network of wealth or whatever. You can still do it. And there are organizations that focus on investing specifically in women like Astia Angel Group, Golden Seeds Angel Group. There are many out there that you can Google, and there are some lists you can find and target those as well.
Yeah, I feel like you're a walking billboard for your business, and you have to tell everyone about it and ask them, even the people sitting next to you on a Southwest airplane. Paid off for you. Well, yes. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us and your tips and your wisdom. And we really, really hope, we wish you the best of luck with this next, with this next year. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was great to see you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found this episode inspiring. I know getting started with your entrepreneurial journey can seem like a big task, but I am here to help you. I created a free guide with actionable steps on how to get started. Click on the link in the show notes and drop your name and email to have it delivered straight to your inbox. Have a beautiful day.